The phone rang at 4:35 p.m. on what should have been a normal Thursday. Natalie's voice came through the speaker in the same cheerful, casual tone she'd perfected over the last 6 months. "Hey, babe, I just landed. Can you pick me up?" she asked brightly. I stayed still in the leather chair inside my home office. It was the chair where I'd created spreadsheets for our financial future and drawn plans for the dream kitchen we wanted to renovate. It was also where, 3 weeks earlier, I'd watched my 12-year marriage fall apart through messages I was never supposed to see. "Tell Marcus to drop you off at your parents' house," I said, my voice firm and steady. "I know everything. The private investigator sent me the full report." The silence on the other end was so complete that I could hear my own heart beating. Then she sucked in a sharp breath, and I knew Natalie's perfect lie was finally dead. 12 years. That was how long we'd been married when it all ended with one phone call. We met when I was 27 and she was 25. We were two young professionals still trying to figure out where we belonged in the world. I worked as a civil engineer with a stable career and ambitions for something bigger. Natalie was a pharmaceutical sales representative. Her territory kept her busy, but the money was good. We made one important decision early in our relationship. We weren't going to have children. We wanted to focus on our careers, travel through Europe every summer, and enjoy the freedom of having two incomes. Friends with kids often looked at us with envy because we had extra money and could take spontaneous weekend trips whenever we wanted. On paper, our life looked perfect. We owned a house in Millbrook Estates with a two-car garage. Our jobs brought in more than 6 figures combined. We had regular date nights at expensive restaurants and took yearly trips to Tuscany, Portugal, and Scotland. We were the couple who made a childless marriage seem easy and fulfilling. Natalie was beautiful without appearing to try. She stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, with auburn hair that caught the light perfectly, and green eyes that sparkled whenever she laughed. She dressed like someone who understood how important appearances were in sales. She was always polished and professional. The warning signs began 8 months ago. Natalie suddenly started paying more attention to how she looked. She began a new workout routine, followed a strict skincare plan, and bought clothes that revealed more skin. She also carried her phone everywhere. Whenever she typed, she angled the screen away from me and claimed she was dealing with demanding clients. Then the distance in our bedroom started. For 12 years, we'd shared a comfortable rhythm. It was familiar, intimate, and satisfying. Suddenly, she was too tired most nights. Even when we did make love, she seemed far away, as though her mind was somewhere else. Still, I trusted her completely. We'd survived career changes, moves, and deaths in the family. We had built our life from nothing. We were two middle-class kids who'd created more together than either of us could have built alone. I believed the foundation of our marriage was solid. I discovered the truth on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks before the airport call. Natalie was taking a shower, and I needed to check our shared calendar on her laptop. As I reached for it, a message appeared on the screen. D. Bennett, Regional Manager. The preview said, "I can't wait to have you in my bed again. These conferences are the only thing getting me through the week." My hands instantly went cold. With trembling fingers, I took a screenshot. Then, while Natalie hummed in the shower, I spent the next hour carefully searching through her cloud backup. What I found destroyed me. There were hundreds of messages going back 6 months. Pictures of hotel rooms I'd never seen. Receipts from dinners I'd never attended. Private jokes about how clueless I was and how I was married to my job. Marcus Bennett was her regional manager. He was married and had 3 children. His LinkedIn photos had the smug look of a man who thought his middle management title made him important. The affair itself wasn't even the worst part. What hurt most was how casually they treated it. They laughed about how unaware I was. Natalie would sit beside me on our couch and text Marcus, telling him how boring I'd become and how she deserved more than coming home to blueprints and spreadsheets. In one conversation, Marcus asked, "Does he suspect anything?" Natalie replied, "Please. Ethan couldn't find a clue if it came gift-wrapped. He's so buried in his work that I could bring you home for dinner. and he'd probably ask if you wanted to see his newest project drawings. They followed it with laughing emojis. My dedication to our future had become their private joke. That night, after Natalie fell asleep beside me, I made a choice. I wasn't going to explode or lose control. I was going to do something far darker than she expected. I would document everything. Then, when the timing was right, I would tear both their lives apart with surgical precision. After I ended the airport call, she kept trying to reach me. 17 missed calls. Then one text appeared. "Ethan, please let me explain." I deleted it without answering and poured myself 3 fingers of the bourbon we'd been saving for our anniversary. The real work would begin tomorrow. The morning after that call, I woke inside a house that felt like a crime scene. Natalie's coffee mug was still in the sink from 4 days earlier. Her reading glasses rested on the nightstand. Her moisturizer sat on the bathroom counter. All those small pieces of our shared life now looked like evidence. I didn't break down. I made coffee, ate some toast, and called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Then I drove across town to a strip mall office with a sign outside. Ramirez Investigations. Discreet. Professional. Results. Victor Ramirez looked exactly like a retired cop who'd become a private investigator. He was somewhere in his 50s with a gray mustache and eyes that had clearly seen too much. His office smelled like stale coffee and disappointment. "Infidelity case?" he asked before I even sat down. 6 months, I said, sliding a check across his desk. "I need documents, photos, timelines, financial records, communication logs, anything that will hold up in court." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Most men hire me hoping I'll prove their wife isn't cheating. You want me to prove she is?" "I already know she is," I replied. "I need ammunition." "You're asking for the premium package," he said. "It won't be cheap." "Money isn't the problem," I told him firmly. "I want her destroyed." Victor had spent 15 years in that business, but something in my voice made him lean closer. "Son, I've dealt with plenty of angry husbands. Revenge costs a lot, and it doesn't always make you feel better." "That isn't your concern," I said coldly. "Your job is to get me evidence that survives when this goes nuclear." Within 2 weeks, Victor handed me a manila folder thicker than our mortgage paperwork. It contained hotel receipts covering 6 months. Photos of Natalie and Marcus holding hands outside restaurants. Credit card records showing Marcus had paid for almost everything. Time-stamped pictures of them kissing inside parking garages. There was even a recording of them laughing about how I was too busy with blueprints to notice what was happening. The financial report was the most damaging part. Natalie had used our joint credit card to buy Marcus gifts, expensive watches, designer clothes, and cologne. Over 6 months, she had spent $8,247 of our money on the affair. Victor traced every charge, matched it with dates, and created an airtight timeline of her lies. While he collected evidence, I carried out my own plan. I met with Sophie Carter, the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the city. She was a shark in a tailored suit, famous for tearing unfaithful spouses apart in court. "Your situation is unusual," Sophie said as she studied the evidence. "Most cheaters are careless because of emotion. Your wife is being strategic, which means you need to be smarter." She explained the leverage available in our state. Adultery wouldn't greatly change how assets were divided, but it could affect alimony and strengthen my position during negotiations. "We don't only show that she cheated," Sophie said. "We prove she was systematically draining the marriage while preparing her exit." I made another calculated move. I opened a separate bank account and quietly transferred half of our savings, $14,700, which legally belonged to me. I collected financial paperwork, photographed valuable possessions, and documented everything we owned together. Then I scheduled consultations with 3 other lawyers in town. I didn't need all of them, but once I spoke with them, attorney-client privilege could prevent Natalie from hiring them later. It was strategic warfare disguised as legal advice. I also contacted Marcus's wife without revealing who I was. I created an anonymous email account and sent Rebecca Bennett one piece of evidence, a hotel receipt showing Marcus's room charge on a night he had told her he was attending a conference alone. The timestamp also showed Natalie's keycard access. I made no accusations. I included only the receipt and one sentence. Thought you should know. Within a week, Marcus started getting careless. Victor reported that Rebecca was asking questions, checking his phone and demanding details about his travel schedule. Marcus began forgetting his cover stories, contradicting himself, and acting nervous. Throughout the entire 3-week investigation, Natalie suspected nothing. She returned from business trips cheerful and affectionate, bringing me gifts from cities she hadn't really visited for work. She would curl up beside me, rest her head on my shoulder, and describe exhausting days with difficult clients. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she said one night, while tracing circles across my chest. "You're my rock, Ethan, my constant." The irony nearly suffocated me, but I played my role perfectly. I remained the loving husband who worried about her stress, admired her success, and felt grateful for our stable marriage. "I love you too," I said, kissing the top of her head while calculating how many hours she had spent in Marcus's bed that week. Every lie, fake smile, and kiss that tasted like betrayal became more evidence. Natalie believed she was buying time to prepare her escape. In reality, she was giving me time to build her prison. 3 weeks after I hired Victor, she announced another business trip. 4 days in San Diego for a regional conference. "I'll miss you," she said, before kissing me goodbye. "Enjoy the conference, honey," I replied. Victor was already boarding his flight. The next morning, Sophie would file the divorce papers. Natalie's perfect lie was about to become her perfect nightmare. Natalie flew to San Diego on Tuesday morning, kissing me with lips that would touch another man within hours. The moment her car disappeared from sight, I became someone else entirely. Phase 2 began with a call to Sophie Carter. "She's gone. Execute," I said. The divorce petition Sophie filed wasn't ordinary. It was a surgical strike designed to tear Natalie's life apart with legal precision. I demanded that she immediately leave our marital home, repay the $8,247 she had spent on the affair, cover her own legal expenses because of her misconduct, and accept a property settlement that strongly favored me as the financially responsible spouse. The most damaging clause was Sophie's masterpiece. If Natalie challenged any of the terms, we would submit the entire evidence file in court, including explicit photographs, text conversations, and audio recordings. Once submitted, everything would become public record. It was legal blackmail, carefully written and completely devastating. While Sophie handled the divorce filing, I launched the second part of Phase 2, destroying Marcus professionally. Marcus worked for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, a company with strict ethics rules against relationships between managers and their subordinates. I studied the employee handbook, corporate hierarchy, and recent legal settlements involving workplace misconduct. Marcus wasn't simply having an affair, he was also violating rules concerning power imbalances in pharmaceutical sales. The anonymous complaint I sent to Meridian's Human Resources Department was carefully constructed. I documented how Marcus had used company resources to support the affair. Hotel rooms were charged to corporate accounts for training sessions that never occurred. Company credit cards paid for romantic dinners. Business travel schedules were altered to arrange private meetings. I attached evidence showing a pattern that violated company policy and federal standards governing conduct within the pharmaceutical industry. Meridian reacted quickly. Within 48 hours, Marcus was placed on administrative leave while the company opened a formal investigation. My complaint had opened the floodgates to an inquiry that could permanently destroy his career. Meanwhile, Victor was in San Diego documenting Natalie and Marcus's final romantic getaway with forensic precision. He photographed them checking into a beachfront resort, holding hands on the sand, kissing in restaurants, and relaxing beside the pool. He also filmed them returning to their room with shopping bags, all paid for with Marcus's corporate credit card. That footage would later become evidence in Meridian's investigation. But Victor captured something even more valuable: their conversations. Using long-range audio equipment, He recorded Natalie and Marcus discussing their future over dinner Wednesday night. Rebecca's been asking questions, Marcus said. She found hotel receipts. What did you tell her? Natalie asked, her voice tense. Company business. But she isn't buying it. She hired a private investigator. Natalie nearly choked on her wine. What? How do you know? I'm not an idiot, Nat, Marcus replied. Some guy has been following me, taking pictures and tracking my schedule. Rebecca is building a case. If she finds out about us, Natalie began. She already knows, he cut in. The question is what she plans to do. What about us? Natalie asked desperately. What are we going to do? Marcus stayed silent for a long moment. Maybe we should slow things down until the heat dies off. Slow things down? Natalie's voice rose. I've been lying to my husband for 6 months, Marcus. I was planning to leave him for you, and now you want to slow things down? I never said I was leaving Rebecca, he replied coldly. You assumed that. I assumed, she snapped. You said you loved me. You told me I was what your life was missing. You are, he said dismissively. But I have 3 kids, Nat. I can't simply walk away. So what am I supposed to do? She asked, her voice cracking. Go back to Ethan and act like none of this happened? Ethan is a good man, Marcus replied with a shrug. You could do worse. Natalie stared across the table at him. You son of a, she whispered. You made me believe. I never promised you anything, Natalie, he interrupted harshly. We both knew what this was. Natalie stormed away, leaving Marcus behind to pay the bill. Victor followed her back to the hotel. She spent the evening alone on the balcony, drinking wine and crying into her phone as she left voicemails. Marcus never returned. While their relationship collapsed in San Diego, I carried out the final phase at home. I spent Wednesday packing Natalie's belongings one item at a time. Every piece of clothing, personal possession, and piece of jewelry went into neatly labeled boxes. Clothes, shoes, personal items, bathroom supplies. I even packed the lingerie she'd purchased for Marcus, along with printed copies of the credit card receipts. Thursday morning, I changed the locks. I removed her access to our joint bank accounts, leaving only what the law required. I canceled her credit cards and changed every password connected to our shared accounts: Netflix, Amazon, utilities, and insurance. I changed the Wi-Fi password and disconnected all her devices. My most psychologically damaging move involved the master bedroom. I stripped the bed we had shared for 12 years and replaced the sheets with a different color and thread count. I moved her dresser into the garage and rearranged the furniture until the bedroom no longer looked like a space we had shared. I also installed security cameras throughout the property. They were partly for legal protection, but I wanted her humiliation recorded. Every tear, tantrum, and desperate plea would be saved. Thursday afternoon, I received confirmation that Meridian had fired Marcus. The investigation uncovered not only his affair with Natalie, but inappropriate relationships with 2 other subordinates over the previous 5 years. Meridian's zero-tolerance policy meant immediate termination for cause. No severance, no recommendation, no future in pharmaceutical sales. Rebecca filed for divorce that same morning. She had enough evidence to make sure Marcus lost everything: the house, their savings, and access to his children. Thursday evening, I finally received the call I'd been waiting for. Natalie's flight would arrive Friday at 3:47 p.m. Marcus's flight would land 20 minutes later. Neither of them knew what was waiting. At midnight, Natalie sent me a text. Miss you, babe. I can't wait to come home. Let's open that wine we've been saving and have a date night. I walked to the wine rack, took out the bottle we had bought during our honeymoon in Tuscany, and poured it down the sink. Then I replied, Sounds perfect. It was the last lie I would ever tell her. Friday, 3:47 p.m. Natalie's voice came through my phone speaker, cheerful and relaxed, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. Hey, babe, I landed. Can you pick me up? she asked brightly. I sat in my leather chair, surrounded by proof of her 6-month betrayal, holding the phone with steady hands. Tell Marcus to take you to your parents' house, I said calmly. I know everything. The private investigator sent me the full report. The silence seemed endless. I pictured her standing near baggage claim, holding a suitcase filled with lingerie she had worn for another man, while her perfect lie collapsed around her. What are you talking about? She stammered, her voice cracking. Ethan, what? 6 months, Natalie, I interrupted. Marcus Bennett, the Ritz in Miami, the beachfront hotel in San Diego, every conference that wasn't really a conference. Victor Ramirez documented everything. She said nothing. You have 1 hour to collect the boxes on the porch before I donate them to Goodwill. Your parents know you're coming. From now on, contact me only through my attorney. Then I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Over the next hour, her name appeared on my screen 17 times. I didn't answer once. What Natalie didn't know was that I had called her parents the previous day. I wasn't trying to spread our private business. I simply gave them one devastating warning. Natalie has been having an affair for 6 months. She'll probably come to you tomorrow after her life falls apart. I thought you deserved the truth before she created her own version. Her father, Daniel, was a quiet man with strong principles. We had always gotten along well, 2 engineers who respected precision and careful planning. His reply was controlled and cold. I'm sorry, Ethan. Natalie was raised better than this. She'll have to face the consequences of her choices. Her mother, Monica, cried. She wasn't crying because Natalie's marriage was ending. She was ashamed that her daughter had learned to lie so easily. What kind of person did we raise? She asked through tears. How could she do this to you? To all of us? So when Natalie called from the airport, hysterical and desperate, she found no sympathy waiting for her. Her father coldly told her to come home and explain herself while her mother sobbed in the background. At the same time, Marcus was facing his own disaster. Rebecca had confronted him that morning with printed messages, hotel receipts, and photographs. She had spent weeks preparing her own case while pretending to be an unsuspecting wife. When Marcus's plane landed, divorce papers were waiting for him, along with a restraining order that kept him from returning home or contacting his children without supervision. He called Natalie from the airport in a panic. Nat, we have to stop talking, he said. Rebecca knows everything. She's taking the kids, the house, everything. My lawyer says any contact between us could damage my case. Your case? Natalie shouted. What about my case? What about us? There is no us, he replied harshly. There never was. This was only fun. I thought you understood that. Then he hung up. Marcus had made his choice. He chose his children and whatever remained of his life over the woman who had destroyed her marriage for him. Natalie stood alone in the airport terminal, her perfect lie shattered, with nowhere to go except her parents' house. I watched the rest unfold through Victor's final surveillance report. Natalie took an Uber to our home, the house we had purchased together 7 years earlier, and renovated with love and shared dreams. The locks had been changed. Her belongings were stacked in neat boxes on the driveway, like a yard sale displaying the remains of a broken life. Clothes, shoes, personal belongings, bathroom supplies. I had even packed a box labeled Gifts for Marcus. Inside were the expensive watches, cologne, and jewelry she had purchased for another man using our money. The security cameras recorded Natalie's breakdown in high definition. She hammered on the front door, screamed my name, and demanded that I stop acting ridiculous and speak to her like an adult. She tested every window and door, then tried the garage code, which no longer worked. Eventually, she collapsed on the front steps and sobbed while our neighbors watched through their windows. Inside, I sat in my office wearing noise-canceling headphones. I watched her fall apart on my laptop as though it were a movie. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sympathy, no regret. Only the empty recognition that justice was being delivered with mathematical precision. Natalie's parents arrived an hour later. Daniel looked older and grayer, diminished by what his daughter had done. Monica couldn't bring herself to look directly at Natalie. They loaded the boxes into their car without speaking while Natalie begged for understanding, forgiveness, and a chance to explain. "There's nothing to explain," Daniel finally said. "You made your decision. Now you have to live with it." The following morning, Natalie was served with divorce papers at her parents' house by a professional process server. She read them in disbelief while her coffee turned cold and reality finally settled in. "I demanded that she permanently leave the marital home, repay the $8,247 she had taken from our marriage to fund the affair, and cover her own legal expenses." The filing included a detailed financial report listing every charge she had made for Marcus. Restaurants, hotels, gifts, clothing, every lie had been itemized and assigned a price. But the clause Sophie had written was the most devastating. If Natalie challenged any part of the settlement, we would submit the complete evidence file as exhibits in court, making it public record. The photos of her with Marcus, recordings of their conversations, and messages discussing their sex life and mocking me would be preserved forever in legal files that anyone could access. Natalie desperately tried to hire a lawyer, only to learn that I had already consulted with the 3 best divorce attorneys in the city. Attorney-client privilege prevented all of them from representing her. She had no choice but to hire a lower-tier attorney. He reviewed the evidence once and immediately advised her to settle fast and quietly. "You have no leverage," her lawyer told her bluntly. "Your husband documented everything, positioned himself perfectly, and built an airtight case. If this reaches court, you'll be ruined financially and publicly. Accept the settlement and start rebuilding your life." Meanwhile, Marcus's world continued its spectacular collapse. Meridian's investigation uncovered a 5-year pattern of misconduct involving several female subordinates. He was fired and reported to industry regulators, making sure he would never work in pharmaceutical sales again. His professional network disappeared overnight. Rebecca's divorce case was just as brutal. Marcus lost the house, half his pension, and most of their savings. The custody agreement allowed only supervised visits after his children sided with their mother. He went from a suburban success story to an unemployed outcast living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. Natalie contacted Marcus one final time, hoping they might save something from the wreckage. He blocked her number. The affair that had cost her everything had meant nothing to him. 3 weeks after the airport call, Natalie sat inside her childhood bedroom. At 37 years old, she was surrounded by boxes from her former life and scrolling through job listings. Her career in pharmaceutical sales was finished. News about her affair with a superior had spread throughout the industry. Her savings were disappearing into legal fees and the money she owed the marital estate. Her social circle had vanished as friends chose sides, and nearly all of them chose mine. 6 months later, our divorce was finalized. Natalie accepted the settlement without a fight. She had no leverage and no money for a prolonged legal battle. She couldn't afford a prolonged legal fight. Natalie walked away with far less than she would have received in a peaceful divorce. She had to cover her own legal bills and repay the money she'd spent on Marcus. She moved back in with her parents and commuted 2 hours each way to a job that paid half her former salary. Her pharmaceutical career was over. News of her affair with a supervisor had spread across the industry, making major companies unwilling to hire her. She went from a promising professional to a warning story, from a successful suburban wife to a middle-aged woman rebuilding her life from nothing. Mutual friends told me she had lost a lot of weight and looked tired and empty. Therapy had become a necessity, not a choice. Her social media pages, once filled with carefully selected pictures of our perfect life, went silent. The woman who used to command attention at dinner parties now avoided social events completely. Marcus's collapse was even more dramatic. Meridian fired him, Rebecca divorced him, his children cut him off after learning about his affairs and chose their mother's side. He went from a 6-figure regional manager to an unemployed outcast. Eventually, he found work selling products for a small medical supply company. His reputation was ruined. His family was gone. His future prospects had nearly disappeared. The last I heard, Marcus lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and drove a 10-year-old Toyota instead of the BMW he had used to impress Natalie. His court-ordered visits with his children were supervised, and they barely spoke to him. Rebecca had taken nearly everything, and Marcus learned that an affair creates consequences far beyond the hotel rooms where it happens. Natalie and Marcus never spoke again after their final airport call. The affair that cost her everything had meant nothing to him. To Marcus, she was only another conquest and another mistake he wanted to erase. When Natalie reached out during her emotional collapse, he blocked her number. The man she believed she loved, the man she destroyed our marriage for, discarded her as easily as he had discarded his wife and children. As for me, I was getting by. The house felt empty. There were no more shared dinners, Netflix marathons, or quiet companionship. But the place also felt clean. No more secrets, no more lies, no more wondering where she truly was when she claimed to be working late. The exhaustion of living beside someone who was constantly deceiving me had disappeared. In its place was the quieter loneliness of living alone. Financially, I was more secure than I had been in years. Natalie's income was gone, but so were her expenses. Somehow, I ended up with more money left over each month. The mortgage that once strained our budget was easy to manage on my salary alone. Some well-meaning friends arranged several dates for me because they believed I needed to move on. But I studied every woman for signs of dishonesty. Every phone call seemed suspicious. Every smile felt like it might hide some calculated motive. The damage Natalie caused reached far beyond our marriage. She had poisoned my ability to trust freely and love without holding something back. Most evenings I sat in the same office chair where I had taken the airport call. I looked at the same view outside, but I saw it through different eyes. The future I had planned with Natalie was gone. We were supposed to grow old together, keep traveling, and maybe finally get a dog. Instead, my life became smaller, quieter, and lonelier. But it was also honest. I didn't regret what I had done. Natalie made her choice when she started an affair instead of asking for a divorce. She chose to spend our money on another man rather than tell me she was unhappy. I simply answered her choices with choices of my own. The friends who once envied our perfect marriage now looked at me with a mixture of respect and pity. They admired how I handled everything, calmly, strategically, and within the law. But they also saw the price. I had won, but I had won alone. I had gotten justice, but justice doesn't keep a man warm at night. On the anniversary of the airport call, I went alone to the expensive restaurant where Natalie and I had celebrated our final anniversary. I wasn't there because I missed her. I went for closure. I sat at a table for one, ordered the same wine we had shared that night, and remembered who we had been before her affair destroyed everything. Then I lifted my glass toward the empty chair across from me. Not in Natalie's memory, but in recognition of the man I had been before I learned that love could be a lie and trust could be used as a weapon. To hard lessons, I said quietly before finishing my wine. I wasn't happy, but I was free. And sometimes in a broken world, freedom is the only victory a man can hope for.